The healing chamber smelled of sage and desperation. Mira stood at the entrance, her bare feet silent against the cold stone floor, watching as yet another elder shaman packed away his useless talismans and shook his head in defeat. Alpha Kale Silverstone lay motionless on the ceremonial bed, his massive chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of sleep, but his eyes remained closed, his consciousness trapped somewhere beyond reach. It had been 23 days since the battle at Crimson Ridge, 23 days since the poisoned blade had pierced his side, 23 days since the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories had fallen into this mysterious slumber that no magic could break. Mira watched the shaman bow to Elder Marcus and slip past her without acknowledgement, as most pack members did. She was used to being invisible, the mute Omega who cleaned wounds and mixed herbs in the healer's cottage, the girl whose silence made others uncomfortable, whose trauma-scarred past was whispered about in pitying tones she pretended not to notice. She had lost her voice at 7 years old. The night rogues had slaughtered her family, the night she had hidden in a closet and watched through a crack as her mother's throat was torn open. The scream that should have emerged that night had died inside her, calcifying into permanent silence that no amount of healing magic could reverse. The pack healers said it was psychological, that her wolf had locked away her voice to protect her sanity, but Mira knew the truth. Her voice hadn't been stolen. She had buried it herself, deep where the memories couldn't reach it, where the screams of that night couldn't claw their way out. Elder Marcus noticed her finally, his weathered face creasing with something between hope and desperation. "You can try," he signed clumsily. One of only 3 pack members who had bothered to learn her language. "We have nothing left to lose." The words stung despite their practicality. Mira had tended countless pack members over the years, her gentle hands and intuitive understanding of herbs making her valuable despite her disability. But she had never been trusted with anything this important. Now, with Kale's condition deteriorating and his beta preparing to assume permanent leadership, they were willing to gamble on the voiceless Omega, who communicated through hand gestures and written notes. She approached the bed slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had seen Kale from a distance countless times. The towering alpha whose presence commanded instant respect, whose rare smiles could light up pack gatherings, whose strategic brilliance had protected their territory from multiple threats. Up close, he was even more devastating. All sharp angles and raw masculine beauty, dark hair falling across a forehead creased with whatever dreams or nightmares played behind his closed eyelids. His hand lay palm up on the bedspread, long fingers, relaxed, and something inside Mira's chest pulled tight with an emotion she couldn't name. She sat carefully on the edge of the bed and reached for his hand, her smaller fingers sliding against his palm. The moment their skin connected, the world exploded into sensation. A rush of consciousness slammed into her mind, not words exactly, but feelings, images, desperate awareness. And then, crystal clear in the silence of her thoughts, a voice. "Please, please. Someone hear me. I'm here. I'm trapped. I can hear everything, but I can't move, can't speak, can't break through. Please." Mira gasped, her free hand flying to her mouth. The voice continued, growing more frantic. 23 days of this hell. 23 days of listening to them give up, of feeling my body weaken, of knowing I'm failing my pack while imprisoned in my own mind. If anyone can hear this, if there's any chance, please help me. I'm Kale Silverstone, and I'm screaming into the void, and no one can hear me. Her fingers tightened around his hand instinctively, and the voice in her mind stopped abruptly. A pause, heavy with shock, then quieter, filled with desperate hope. Someone squeezed my hand. "Someone is there. Please, if you can hear me." Squeeze again. Mira squeezed, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. The response was immediate, a wave of overwhelming relief crashing through her consciousness. "Oh, thank the moon goddess. Thank everything holy. You can hear me. Whoever you are, you can hear me. I don't know how this is possible, but please don't let go. Don't leave me alone in here." She wouldn't, couldn't. Not when she finally understood what true helplessness felt like. Not when she recognized the same desperate isolation she had lived with for 18 years. Her own thoughts formed carefully, pushing outward the way she sometimes daydreamed conversations in her mind. I hear you, Alpha Kale. I won't leave. I'm here. The shock that radiated back to her nearly broke the connection. You can speak to me? Into my mind? How? Who are you? And then, with touching vulnerability, your voice is beautiful. Mira felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever called her voice beautiful, because no one had heard it since she was 7 years old. I'm Mira, the healer's assistant. I can't speak out loud. Haven't been able to for years. But somehow in here, in this space between us, the words come. She paused, then added, They asked me to try to heal you because everyone else has failed. The presence in her mind shifted, and she felt him processing this information, felt the moment recognition clicked. The mute Omega. I've seen you around the compound, always in the background, always silent. They brought you as a last resort. His mental tone wasn't bitter, just matter of fact. I would laugh if I could move. The most powerful alpha in the north, saved by the Omega no one notices. She bristled slightly. I notice things. Maybe more than those who can speak because I watch. Instead of talking. I've seen you too, Alpha. I've seen how you shoulder everyone's problems, how you take the hardest missions yourself, how you visit wounded warriors in the medical wing when you think no one's paying attention. I've seen the weight you carry. Silence in her mind, but not empty silence. Filled silence, the kind pregnant with emotion. Finally his voice returned, softer. Kyle. When it's just us in here, just call me Kale. And Mira. He paused. I need you to understand something. Whatever put me in this state, it's not a normal poison. I can feel it. Like dark tendrils wrapped around my consciousness, keeping me separated from my body. Every healer and shaman who has tried to wake me has only made it tighten its grip. I don't know if you can help, but I need you to be careful. This thing fights back. Before you ask me to share your story with others or find another way, they won't believe me. Mira thought to him, her mental voice tinged with old pain. I have no voice too. Tell them. And my written words have never carried weight. They see me as broken, limited. They won't trust that I can truly communicate with you. Then we figure this out ourselves. Kale responded immediately, and she felt the determination radiating from him like heat. You and me, Mira. Tell me everything you know about the attack, about what they've tried, about what you see when you look at my physical body. We solve this together, and so began the most extraordinary partnership of Mira's life. Elder Marcus allowed her to remain in the healing chamber, assuming she was attempting some prolonged therapeutic technique. She stayed by Kale's bedside for hours each day, her hand wrapped around his, her mind connected to his consciousness in a way that defied all understanding of pack magic. To any observer, she was simply a silent Omega sitting vigil, but in the private universe of their joined thoughts, they were partners, strategists, and slowly, inevitably, something much more. If you're enjoying this story, please leave a comment below about the most powerful form of communication you've experienced beyond words. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our supernatural romance content. Kale told her about the battle at Crimson Ridge, how the rogue faction had been more organized than expected, how their leader had wielded a blade that seemed to shimmer with unnatural darkness. I felt it the moment it pierced my side, he explained. The memory-carrying phantom. Pain. It wasn't just silver or wolfsbane. It was something older. Something that targeted the bond between wolf and human, between consciousness and body. I made it back to our territory before collapsing, but I've been trapped ever since. Mira examined his physical wound carefully, the angry red scar that refused to fully heal despite their strongest medicines. She described what she saw to him, the way the tissue seemed to pulse with a faint darkness, how traditional healing herbs recoiled, slightly when applied. In turn, she searched through every medical text in the healer's library, reading passages aloud in her mind so Kale could hear them, the two of them analyzing symptoms and potential remedies together. but their connection grew beyond medical collaboration. During the long hours of silence, they shared pieces of themselves that neither had ever revealed to another soul. Kale confessed the crushing pressure of alpha leadership, how every decision he made held life or death consequences, how he lay awake most nights replaying choices and wondering if he had done enough. "I became alpha at 19 when my father was killed," he told her, his mental voice heavy with old grief. "Everyone expected me to be him, to be this unshakable pillar of strength. I've spent a decade trying to meet those expectations, and I'm so tired, Mira. I'm so tired of being what everyone needs, and never being allowed to be human." She understood that exhaustion intimately. Being mute, made. People treat her as either fragile or invisible. Never quite whole, never quite trusted with important responsibilities despite her skills. "They speak around me, not to me," she shared. "Even those who care do it with such careful gentleness. Like I might shatter. They don't understand that silence doesn't mean weakness, that trauma doesn't make you less. I've survived things that would break others, but they only see what I've lost, not what I've gained." "What have you gained?" Kale asked gently. "The ability to truly listen," Mira answered. "Most people hear words but miss meaning. I watch body language. I notice micro-expressions. I understand the things people don't say. Silence taught me that communication goes far deeper than voice." She paused. "Vulnerable, but it's also incredibly lonely. To have so much inside you and no easy way to share it. To be constantly translating yourself for a world that won't meet you halfway." "I hear you now," Kale said softly. "Every word, every feeling. And, Mira, your thoughts are the most articulate, most profound things I've encountered. The way you process the world, the insights you have, it's extraordinary. You're not broken. You're different, and that difference is powerful." Something cracked open in Mira's chest, some protective shell she had built around her heart. No one had ever spoken to her like this, had ever made her feel seen rather than pitied. Over the following weeks, their connection deepened in ways that transcended the physical. She shared memories of her family before the attack, the warmth of her mother's laugh, her father's terrible jokes, her older brother teaching her to track in the forest. She showed him the night of the massacre through images and sensations, trusting him with the trauma she had locked away for so long. Kale held space for her pain without trying to fix it, without offering empty platitudes. He simply listened with his whole being, and then shared his own scars, the guilt of warriors he had lost in battle, the weight of strategic decisions that had saved many but sacrificed few, the loneliness of leadership that kept him isolated even in a pack of hundreds. "I've had lovers," he admitted, "but never a partner. Never someone who knew all of me and didn't need me to be the alpha every moment. In here with you, I can just be Kale. Flawed, uncertain, struggling Kale." "You're still strong," Mira assured him. "Strength isn't the absence of struggle. It's continuing despite it." Their conversations ranged from profound to playful. Kyle made her laugh with stories of pack politics gone absurdly wrong, and she entertained him with observations about pack members' secret quirks she had noticed over years of quiet watching. They debated philosophy and strategy, shared favorite memories and worst fears, built an intimacy that most couples never achieved because it was based purely on genuine connection, stripped of all physical distraction and social performance. And inevitably, feelings neither had anticipated began to grow. Mira found herself thinking about Kale constantly, rushing through her other duties to return to his bedside, her heart lifting the moment their hands touched and their minds reconnected. She memorized the planes of his sleeping face, the small scar on his jaw, the way his hair fell. She imagined what his voice would sound like out loud, how his smile would transform his serious features, what it would feel like to have those strong arms around her. Kale fell just as hard, though the realization terrified him. "Mira," he said one evening as sunset painted the healing chamber in amber light, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to understand I'm not saying it because I'm desperate or trapped or seeking comfort. I'm saying it because it's true, and because life has taught me that truth matters more than timing." Her pulse quickened. "What is it?" "I think you're my mate." he said simply. My true mate. I felt the pull since the first moment our minds connected, but I dismissed it as gratitude or circumstance. But it's not. Every moment with you feels like coming home. Your thoughts are the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. Your strength humbles me. Your kindness when you've every reason to be bitter inspires me. I love you, Mira. Completely, impossibly, irrevocably. And I know you can't feel the mate bond the same way I do while I'm trapped like this, so I'm not asking anything of you. I just needed you to know. Tears streamed down Mira's face as she squeezed his hand. Kale, I do feel it. Maybe not through the traditional bond, but I feel it here, in this space we've created. I feel it in every conversation, every shared silence, every moment of understanding. I love you too. I think I started falling the first time you made me feel seen rather than pitied. The joy that radiated from him was incandescent, but on its heels came crushing sorrow, which makes this so much worse, he said quietly. Because I've been doing research too, in my own way. Every time someone has discussed my condition in this room, I've listened. I've heard the healers mention similar cases in ancient texts, and I've pieced together what this really is. The poison that struck me wasn't meant just to trap an alpha. It was designed specifically to separate true mates. Mira went cold. What do you mean? It's called the severance toxin, created centuries ago by a dark coven that believed mate bonds gave werewolves too much power. The poison doesn't just trap consciousness. It creates a barrier that specifically blocks the soul-level connection between destined mates. The longer it remains active, the more it calcifies. Eventually, it makes it impossible for mates to bond, even if the victim wakes. But we're connected now, Mira protested. We've found each other despite it. Because you're different, Kale explained gently. Your silence, your trauma, it changed something in you. Most wolves process everything through verbal communication, through spoken bonds and vocal pack links. You've spent years developing nonverbal pathways, building mental and emotional channels that bypass traditional werewolf communication. That's why you could reach me when no one else could. Your difference is exactly what allowed you to circumvent the poison's barrier. She felt a surge of hope. Then we can fight it. If I can reach you, we can find a way to wake you. Kale's presence in her mind grew heavy with something like dread. I've listened to every conversation, Mira. The healers found references to the severance toxin 2 days ago, but they didn't discuss it openly because the cure is impossible. She felt him stealing himself. The only way to break the toxin's hold is for the trapped mate's true mate to sacrifice their life force, to literally trade their soul's vitality for their partner's freedom. The mate dies, the victim wakes, and the bond that could have been is destroyed forever. No, Mira thought fiercely. Absolutely not. There has to be another way. I've been conscious for 36 days, Kyle said quietly. I've heard them trying everything. There is no other way, and I won't let you even consider it. I won't allow you to die for me when we've just found each other, and I won't allow you to remain trapped forever, Mira countered, her thoughts blazing with determination. We find a third option. We're both too stubborn to accept this ending, so they searched desperately through every resource available. Mira smuggled rare texts from the pack library, reading them silently while maintaining her hand-to-hand connection with Kale. They analyzed the toxin from every angle, looking for weaknesses, alternative solutions, anything that might offer hope. Meanwhile, Kale's physical body grew gradually weaker, despite their best care efforts. His muscles beginning to atrophy, his color fading. Time was running out, and they both knew it. It was Beta James who inadvertently provided a crucial piece of the puzzle. He visited the healing chamber on day 43, discussing transition plans with Elder Marcus in low tones they thought the sleeping alpha couldn't hear. We need to consider the possibility that we can't save him, James said, pain evident in his voice. And if that's true, we need to examine what caused this. The rogue leader who struck Kale, there was something wrong about him. The way he moved, the blade he carried. After the battle, we found evidence in their camp. Dark, magic texts, references to old bloodlines, something about awakened omegas. Awakened omegas, Mira repeated in her mind to Kale. What does that mean? I don't know, but it might matter, Kale responded. Ask him somehow. Find out more. But Mira couldn't ask, couldn't speak, and her written questions would reveal too much. Instead, she waited until James left, then raced to the library, her mind spinning. She pulled every text on Omega history, on ancient hierarchies, on forgotten magic. What she found made her blood run cold, and her heart soar simultaneously. Kale, she thought urgently when she returned to his side. I found something. In the earliest pack histories, before hierarchy became rigid, Omegas weren't the bottom tier. They were spiritual bridges, the members who could traverse between realms, who could communicate with ancestors and spirits. Their power wasn't physical dominance, but metaphysical connection. Over centuries, that knowledge was suppressed, buried, forgotten. But the old texts mention something called the awakening, when an Omega experiences profound trauma that cracks open their consciousness and allows access to their original abilities. You think your trauma awakened something in you, Kale said slowly. That's why you can reach me when others can't. You're not just bypassing the poison through learned behavior. You're accessing ancient Omega magic. And if that's true, Mira continued, her thoughts racing, then maybe I don't have to sacrifice my life to save you. Maybe I can use that connection differently. The toxin was designed to block traditional mate bonds. But what if we forge something deeper? What if instead of trading my life for yours, we create a bond so profound that it pulls you back through the barrier? That's speculation, Kale cautioned. But she heard the hope threading through his words. Dangerous speculation. All we have is dangerous speculation, Mira countered. And I'd rather die trying something than do nothing and lose you. Slowly, they spent the next 3 days preparing. Mira studied every scrap of information about ancient Omega abilities, about soul bonds, about the metaphysics of consciousness. Kale taught her everything he knew about alpha will, about the mental discipline required to lead a pack, about channeling intention into reality. They practiced strengthening their connection, pushing their joined consciousness deeper, learning to merge their thoughts so completely that it became hard to tell where one mind ended and another began. On day 46, as the full moon rose over the Silverstone territory, Mira made her decision. She dismissed the overnight healer, claiming she would watch Kale herself, and locked the healing chamber door. She stripped the crystals and talismans others had left, clearing the space until it was just her and Kale and the moonlight streaming through the windows. She positioned herself beside him, both hands wrapped around his, her forehead pressed to his temple. If you're following this journey, please hit that like button to show your support and tell us in the comments what you would sacrifice for true love. Kale, she called into their shared space. I'm ready. I'm going to try to pull you out. Mira, don't, he pleaded. If this goes wrong, if you push too hard, the toxin could claim you too. I couldn't bear that. And I can't bear leaving you trapped, she replied simply. Trust me. Trust us. Trust that what we've built is stronger than any poison. She closed her eyes and dove deep into their connection, pushing past the comfortable space of their mental communication into uncharted territory. She felt the edges of Kale's consciousness, the bright burning core of who he was, and surrounding it, she sensed the toxin. It appeared in her mind's eye as black, thorny vines wrapped tight around a sphere of light, pulsing with malevolent intent, constricting tighter whenever she approached. She didn't attack it directly. Instead, she reached for something deeper, something the poison's creator could never have anticipated. She reached for the ancient magic sleeping in her own Omega core, the power her trauma had cracked open 18 years ago, the ability that had allowed her to survive losing her voice by learning to communicate through pure intention and emotion. She felt it respond to her call, unfurling like wings she had never known she possessed, ancient and vast, and humming with potential. And then she sang to Kale, not with voice but with soul, a song made of memories and meaning, of every conversation they had shared, every vulnerability exchanged, every moment of understanding and acceptance. She sang of how he had made her feel whole despite her silence, how he had seen strength where others saw disability, how he had loved her not despite her differences but because of them. She sang of her own love for him, fierce and absolute, a love built on genuine knowing rather than superficial attraction, on respect and partnership, and the profound recognition of finding your true match. The song was a bridge, a rope thrown across an impossible chasm, and she felt Kale grasp it from the other side. His consciousness surged toward hers, his own alpha will channeling through their connection, his determination to reach her overriding even the toxin's hold. They met in that space between waking and sleeping, between consciousness and void, and their minds, their souls, merged completely. The toxin fought back. Viciously, pain lanced through Mira's body as the dark vines lashed out, trying to entangle her the way they had entangled Kale. She felt them wrapping around her consciousness, felt the cold emptiness they carried, the same void that had swallowed her voice all those years ago. For a moment, terror threatened to break her concentration. But then Kale was there, his presence wrapping around her protectively, his alpha strength sheltering her even as she worked to free him. "We do this together," he said firmly. "You're not sacrificing yourself. We pull each other through." The realization struck them simultaneously. The ancient Omega texts had been incomplete, missing crucial information because they had been written in a time when hierarchy separated alphas and omegas into distinct roles. But true power didn't come from one or the other alone. It came from partnership, from alpha strength combined with omega connection, from the balance they represented. Mira reached deeper into her omega abilities while Kale channeled his alpha will, and together they became something unprecedented. Her ancient magic wove around the thorny vines, not attacking but transforming, turning poison into fertilizer, darkness into fuel. His iron determination cut through the toxin's hold, not with force, but with absolute conviction that nothing could keep them apart. They burned together, two souls combining into a blaze that incinerated the barrier between them. The severance toxin shattered. Mira felt the moment it broke, felt Kale's consciousness suddenly slam back into his body with stunning force, felt their mate bond snap into place so powerfully that she gasped aloud, and her eyes flew open. Kale's eyes opened at the same instant, gold meeting green, and for a heartbeat they simply stared at each other, seeing with physical eyes for the first time while their minds remained intimately entangled. Then Kale was moving, pulling her down into his arms with strength that belied 46 days of immobility, his hand cupping the back of her head, his face buried in her hair. She felt his chest heaving against hers, felt wetness on her neck that might have been his tears, or hers, or both. Their bond hummed between them, golden and unbreakable, carrying sensations and emotions in both directions now that they could both access it. "Thank you," Kyle whispered aloud, and his voice was everything she had imagined, deep and rough and warm. His actual spoken voice and the mental voice she had known for weeks layered over each other perfectly. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for being brave enough to forge something new." Mira opened her mouth, and for a moment, the old instinct to remain silent almost won. But something had shifted during their bonding. Something fundamental. She had used her soul's voice to sing Kale free, and in doing so, she had remembered that voice and silence were choices, not immutable conditions. The trauma that had locked her voice away had been transformed in the fire of their union, its power integrated rather than buried. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered, and her physical voice was hoarse from disuse, barely louder than breath. But it was there. Kale's eyes widened, his hand coming up to gently touch her throat, wonder written across his features. She continued, each word requiring effort, but possible now. "Thank you for loving all of me." They stayed wrapped in each other until Elder Marcus and Beta James broke down the door, drawn by reports of strange lights emanating from the healing chamber. The shock on their faces when they found Kale awake and mobile, with Mira speaking in halting whispers, would have been comical if the moment hadn't been so profound. Questions exploded from all directions, but Kale silenced them with a single raised hand, the alpha command in the gesture unmistakable. "This Omega saved my life using abilities none of you recognized or valued," he said, his voice carrying steel-edged authority. "Mira reached me when your healers and shamans failed. Not despite her silence, but because of it. Because her differences gave her access to powers you've forgotten existed. She will be honored as my mate, and as a crucial member of this pack, and anyone who treats her as less than extraordinary will answer to me personally." The formal mate ceremony happened a week later, after Kale had recovered his full strength, and after Mira had grown more comfortable using her rediscovered voice, though she still preferred signing much of the time. The pack gathered under the full moon, and when Kale marked her and she marked him in return, their combined power surged through the pack bonds so intensely that several elders gasped aloud. The merge of alpha will and omega connection created something unprecedented, and everyone present felt the potential it represented. But the greatest changes happened more quietly in the weeks and months that followed. Mira began training other omegas in the pack, teaching them to access abilities that had been dormant for generations, helping them understand that hierarchy was a construct that had limited rather than protected them. Under her and Kale's joint leadership, the Silverstone pack transformed, becoming the first in the Northern Territories to treat omegas as spiritual equals rather than subordinates. Kale established new protocols that valued different forms of communication, ensuring that pack members who struggled with traditional verbal expression had alternative ways to contribute. He and Mira created a council that included members from all designations, making decisions through collaboration rather than top-down command. It wasn't always smooth, and not everyone accepted the changes easily, but together they were stronger than any resistance. The investigation into Kale's poisoning revealed a conspiracy that stretched back generations, a faction within multiple packs who feared what awakened. Omegas might mean for traditional power structures. The rogue leader who had struck Kale had been part of a group trying to prevent the very transformation that Mira was now facilitating. The severance toxin had been their weapon of choice because they believed that preventing true mate bonds, especially between alphas and powerful omegas, would maintain the status quo. Instead, their attack had catalyzed exactly what they feared. News of Mira and Kale's bond spread across territories and other. Omegas began awakening to their latent abilities, drawn by the possibility that their differences might be powers rather than weaknesses. A quiet revolution began, one built not on violence, but on recognition and reclamation. Mira's voice never fully returned to what it might have been without trauma. She spoke when necessary, communicated verbally when it mattered, but she never saw silence as something that needed to be fixed. She had learned that silence could be powerful, that communication transcended sound, that being heard had nothing to do with volume and everything to do with being truly seen. She taught these truths to anyone who would listen, and her written words and signed messages carried as much weight as any spoken proclamation. Kale, for his part, learned to lead differently. His time trapped had taught him the vulnerability of absolute strength, the danger of bearing all weight alone. With Mira beside him, he learned to share burdens, to value input from unlikely sources, to recognize that true power came from lifting others rather than standing above them. Their partnership became legendary. The Alpha and Omega, who had defied ancient poison and forged a new kind of bond. 3 years after Kale's awakening, during a gathering of northern packs, a young Omega approached Mira shyly. The girl was maybe 15, and she signed rather than spoke, her hands moving in the fluid language Mira knew so well. "I lost my voice too," the girl signed. "Different reason. Same result. Everyone tells me I'm broken, that I need to be fixed. But watching you, listening to your story, I'm starting to think maybe I'm not broken at all." Mira knelt to the girl's level, her own hands moving in response. "You're not broken," she signed emphatically. "You're different, and different is powerful. The world will try to make you small, will try to convince you that you need to fit their mold. But your silence can be a gift if you learn to wield it." She paused, then added gently, "And if you ever want your voice back, for yourself and not for others, that's powerful too. You get to decide who you are." The girl's eyes filled with tears, and she threw her arms around Mira in a fierce hug. Over the girl's shoulder, Mira met Kale's gaze across the gathering. He was watching her with such profound love and pride that it made her breath catch. Their bond hummed between them, carrying his emotions clearly. "You're changing the world," he sent through their private link. "One awakened heart at a time." "We're changing it," she corrected. "Together. Always together." Because that was the truth they had learned in that healing chamber during 46 days of silent connection. Real strength didn't come from dominance or independence. It came from partnership, from the willingness to be vulnerable, from the courage to forge connections that transcended traditional boundaries. They had saved each other, not through sacrifice, but through synthesis, not by one rescuing the other, but by both refusing to accept a world that would keep them apart. Before we close this story, if it moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more supernatural romance content, and share your thoughts about overcoming isolation to find true connection. Years later, when researchers studied the Silverstone Pact's transformation, they would point to policy changes and structural reforms. But those who had been present, who had witnessed Mira and Kale's bond firsthand, knew the truth. The real revolution had happened in that healing chamber, in the space between waking and sleeping, where a voiceless Omega had sung an Alpha's soul back from the darkness, and in doing so had remembered her own voice, her own power, her own worth. It had happened in every quiet conversation since, in every moment when Kale chose to listen rather than command, in every instance when Mira chose to speak rather than hide. It happened whenever someone who had been told they were less discovered they were actually more, whenever silence was honored as communication rather than dismissed as absence, whenever difference was celebrated as strength rather than marked as weakness. The Silverstone Pact's motto changed under their leadership. Where it once had been strength through dominance, it became strength through connection. And on banners throughout their territory, a new symbol appeared, designed by Mira herself, an Alpha's claw and an Omega's crescent moon, intertwined and equal, representing the truth they had proven with their own bond. That power didn't require voice or force or traditional hierarchy. Sometimes the strongest bonds were forged in silence. Sometimes the greatest awakenings happened in sleep. Sometimes being heard had nothing to do with sound, and everything to do with finding someone willing to truly listen with their whole soul. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person the world called broken was actually the one who would break every limitation the world had tried to impose, rewriting the rules entirely and teaching others to do the same. Not through grand gestures or dramatic revolutions, but through the quiet, persistent, revolutionary act of showing up as themselves, fully and unapologetically, and inviting others to do the same. Mira never regretted the years she spent silent, because those years had taught her everything she needed to know to help others find their voices, whatever form those voices took. And Kale never regretted the 46 days he spent trapped, because those days had taught him how to truly listen, how to recognize value in forms he had been conditioned to overlook, how to lead with empathy rather than just authority. Together, they built something that would outlast them, a legacy not of conquest or dominance, but of recognition and connection. And when old wolves told stories to young pups about the Alpha who learned to hear silence and the Omega who learned to sing without sound, they always ended the same way, with a reminder that the strongest magic isn't found in fangs or claws, or even ancient bloodlines. It's found in the courage to bridge impossible distances, to see past what should be into what could be, to love someone so completely that you're willing to transform not just yourself, but the entire world to make space for both of you to exist, whole and true and finally heard.